Hello, welcome to the SBK Betting Podcast. It's the British Champions Day special. Yes, we've come to the end of the season, and with that in mind, now very much looking forward to this day year on year, where we crown the champions, jockeys, the trainers, the apprentices, the owners, and we also show off the best of our talent. And in recent years, we've had a lot of the Europeans come over as well for this day at Ascot, which is set to be very testing. And we've got 4 Group 1s and 2 very good races complementing that as well. So we're going to get into the racing in a whole, but we will look back quickly on last week's winners. There was a very wet and miserable day at Newmarket for the Dewhurst, and we saw Stars in Their Eyes win at 11-4. That's a horse going forward for Rafe Beckett, and as mentioned by TC, how great a form are his 2-year-olds at the moment. They are rolling day in, day out, so that's still a tip to keep following them outside of just the weekend. He had a good double at Nottingham with his 2-year-olds. So Stars in Their Eyes for Rafe Beckett. And then Ross had Springwell Bay, 130, landing that over at Chepstow's opening meeting. Not always the easiest of weekends for some, and it was a real horrible shame to see the loss of Cuthbert Dibble. But we applaud the reactions from the Twiston Davises, who had a really tough day. But we hope that we'll continue on with some lovely racing going forward. But Springwell Bay was a good selection from Ross, and I know we're going to have a lot more jumps coming up, so hopefully we've got lots of nice days going forward. But that was then. This is now. We've got the Champions Day, as I've mentioned. We've got 4 Group 1s, and we're going to start with the Sprint Stakes. So we've got a full field of 20, and soft ground, straight course will be slightly better, we'd imagine, as it drains a lot better than the round course. It's now gone onto the jumps track as it has extremely testing there at Ascot. And this is a race where we've got some real old favourites that we've seen a lot this season. Kyprios in here won this race a couple of years ago. You've got a recent Group 1 winner, and Montasib, who's heading the market. Kind of blue. Looks like a horse on the upgrade, the 3-year-old. And then you've got plenty of others that we've seen, as I said, in all of these big sprint races this year, the likes of Millstream, Swing Along, and one of the French horses to follow, Bouvetiers. So this is a race where I could go through a lot of these names, TC, and I think you could probably make a case for them. We know last year there was a big 40-1 winner of it. What do you like to find in terms of a sprinter for this race? Because they've had probably quite a long season at this stage, and there are not many of them that come in that fresh. So what kind of sprinter are you looking for when you're trying to find your final selection?
Basically just a horse who's been well campaigned, not over-raced throughout the summer. A horse that handles, obviously, the conditions, which is key. As you say, it is a little bit testing right now. We are recording this on Thursday. Thursday's going to be dry at Ascot. So is Friday, from what I've seen. Saturday morning looks like it's going to be wet. So I do think it will be soft ground come the racing. I want a horse that definitely handles conditions. And most importantly, 6 furlong race at Ascot on the straight course. I want a horse that stays 7. Stamina is so important despite it being a sprint. I know everyone's thinking, how fast is this horse? Which horse is the fastest? They have to stay the 6 at Ascot. It's a stiff 6. Everyone says it whenever we cover an Ascot sprint race. Stiff, straight track. You need a horse that stays further. And the market is kind of sided that way anyway. But there are horses that want the 7 furlongs that have been put in this race because the trainers know that the extra stamina is a big advantage. So the likes of Kyprios, previously a 7 furlong specialist, who's obviously capable of winning over 6 as well. Montasib used to run over 7 and a mile, now dropping back to 6, where we've seen him come to his best this year. The likes of Unequal Love stays further, Kind of Blue stays further. So there's no surprise that the market is edged that way, and I think it's the right thing to do. Talking of Kyprios, as you say, he won this race 2 years ago. Last year, I was at Ascot. I bet Kyprios. It looked like he was coming through to win, despite being hard off the bridle for most of the way. Yet he was fended off in the latter part of the race. Great record in this event. But is he as good as he was last year or even the year before? I don't think so. He's run a couple of really nice races this year, but he's also run a few below par efforts, and that's a bit of a concern for me. Not to say he won't win. I think he'll go close, but I'd just rather a different horse in the race. Maybe a horse that's on the up rather than the horse that's on regressing right now, which Kyprios could be. And the horse that really is on the up is Montasib. I think it should be favourite in here. It's been one of the shining lights of the campaign this year. Last time up, he proved that he's capable of winning at Group 1 level. If you went all the way back to March, this horse was basically a handicapper, and now he's gone right up the grades and proven that he's won, proven he's got the talent to win at the top level by that success last time over Kind of Blue. He is just thriving over 6 furlongs. He loves soft ground. The fact that it's going to be soft on Saturday really helps his chance. William Haggis has got his string firing again at the latter part of the season. And I just think Montasib is more talented than the majority of these. He has that deep closing style from off the pace with the assured stamina that allows him to pick off runners. And albeit we have seen in this race in the past, being on the front end is a positive, I think Montasib can come through these and show his class in the race and get this day off to a good mark for William Haggis, who's got another couple of fantastic chances later on the card that we'll talk about soon.
Yeah, certainly does. Kieran Fallon has been really rewarded. He's got on very well with this horse. 6-year-old now, gone from the handicaps into group company, and he's 5-1. He's a lot shorter than he was when he won that Haydock Sprint Cup. Just a quick word about the draw for this kind of race. We've seen them come from all over the place, but there does tend to be an advantage on some days at Ascot. But what could you see it sort of panning towards on a day where it's quite testing?
Well, this time last year, I think they came down the middle of the track, but the winner, who was it, Art Power last year? Yeah, Art Power, was right over towards the far side, set a sail out early, went clear from stall 1, and then held off the rivals. They went down the middle, but they weren't able to catch a horse low. I actually prefer mid to low draws here, so the draw for Montasib in 6 is absolutely perfect. The same can't necessarily be said about Kyprios in 18.
No, he's in 18. Also, one of the other fancied horses, Kind of Blues, in 17. You know that Art Power is likely to go out and go forward again. He's in 12. Ross, any thoughts about these sprinters? They're really hardy sorts. They're like the sort of middle distance types that we're going to see rocking up at Cheltenham every other week come the national hunt period. And I think you can kind of sort of forgive them for one bad run. If you run them every other week, there's always going to be a different result. Or has there been something that stood out to you?
Well, I think Montasib is the standout because he's been running really well and probably running well on conditions that aren't his optimum. This gives him his best conditions, but such is the nature of sprints. It could well be that he gets his optimum conditions and doesn't get a clear passage, and he is a late closer, as TC said. That said, I've gone with a late closer, but it's just a price thing for me, and it's the French Raver Bouvertier. It's 12-1 with SBK. Really interesting horse. You know, he's been campaigned over a mile, and actually a mile and a half a furlong, 7 furlongs. His penultimate start, he was, a shade unlucky, really, closing over 6 furlongs in a Group 3 behind Spycatcher at Deauville. Thought that showed he's got the speed to at least stay in a position in this race. And then last time out in the foray, 3/4 of a length behind Kinross, over 7 furlongs. He definitely handles soft ground. He'll like this stiff track. Kinross is 4-1. Bouvertier's 12-1. I didn't see the disparity in the price between those two because I think TC's right. Kinross is regressive. It's had quite a long season, Bouvertier. He's not really been spared much. He's been on the go quite a long time, which is a concern. But I just liked his price. He's definitely going to appreciate the ground. He'll love the stiff finish over this trip. So against Montasib, I think is absolutely the right favourite and the most likely winner. He was my sort of each way selection.
Yeah, he's 12-1 in this. The French are coming over with a bit of a plethora of runners throughout the card, and Jan Barbaro will hope that this horse gets a deserved victory as he's been placed and he's been running well without winning this season. So Bouvertier at an each way price 12-1. Montasib is the selection of TC at 5-1. Let's move on to the next of the Group 1s, and I always think this is a very good race. The British Champions Fillies and Mares Stakes. Last year, Blue Stocking was just denied a victory. She went on to win the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe and has really flourished this season. And there could be a horse that's just bubbling under the surface as a future Group 1 horse and a very quality type of horse as well. Kalpana could just be that. She's lining up here at the top of the market for Juddmonte. I don't think she would have been completely out of place if she had lined up in a Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, but she's just a 3-year-old. Andrew Balding is giving her this big target to end the season. William Buick's on board as Oisin Murphy normally teams up with Andrew, is on Queen of the Pride for his retained owners at Qatar Racing. Tiffany for some Art Prescott's in here. And then we've got plenty of others, including likes of Time Lock, and Aidan O'Brien is sending a good few, including Grateful and Wingspan. And I just think this is a good feel about this TC. I like the look of it. I like fillies and mares because I think they're always difficult to really wrap your head around when they're going to come into their own. Some of them are just getting better as the season goes on. So it's difficult to really know where we're at with a lot of them. And I think this makes it quite an intriguing race to sort of study and get your selection out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good race. It's a very lopsided market, though, isn't it? Because Kalpana is a best price 15-8. I've seen some firms going as short as 6-4. That means the percentage chance that the traders are given of this horse to win are between 35% and around 42%. Does Kalpana have that much in hand over the rest of these? I'm not too sure. Now, I understand that she's got loads of improvement in her. Last time on the all-weather, I actually tipped against her with Lion's Pride, and she destroyed that horse. But Lion's Pride isn't a Group 1 horse. He's just a good horse who had nice all-weather form. She's now going up in grade, technically, in terms of status of race. She's facing the fillies and mares again and not the boys, which is obviously easier generally. But I feel like she has to improve a little bit again. And I know she's top on official ratings and she has the potential and she's got the form figures, she's got the connections. I just don't want to take a short price, to be honest. I don't think she warrants as short as 6-4, maybe even not as 7-4. There is a chance she gets punted even shorter based on what happened in the market last time. But for me, I can't bet Kalpana. So I wanted to look for an each way alternative. All but one horse in this race is rated 106 or higher. So 13 of the 14, 106 or higher. It's a very strong and deep renewal. Trying to find an each way play is difficult, but probably the wise way to bet this race. And Content is a horse that I love, and I'm a nobody. I want to say I'm a nobody before I say this. But why has Aidan put her in this race? It's so infuriating. She could go to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf and win. Like, she is more than capable of winning that race. I know they're sending Opera Singer there, but send Content as well. She's more than capable. We saw her finish fourth in the Breeders' Cup last year. I don't understand why she's in here, so I can't go with her. I think she's better on faster ground, despite having form on soft ground. But it was another Irish horse that actually caught my eye in Village Voice for Jesse Harrington, Christian Demuro. Interesting jockey booking on this one. Last time we saw Village Voice was in France, over 1.5 miles on very soft ground, and it was a 4-length romp success with an RPR of 113 in a career best performance. That was one of her first efforts, maybe her first, I can't fully remember, over the trip. She also was obviously well suited by the deep ground. That makes me think there's plenty more improvement to come. And the RPR of 113 means she doesn't have that much to find on the likes of Kalpana. Now, I know she has to give the weight for age allowance. £6, it's not ideal. But I still think Village Voice can run a place here at the very worst. And she's around 12-14-1, so there's good value there. Jesse Harrington should never be overestimated. Christian Demuro, people may not know too much about him on these shores, but he's a very good rider. We've seen in France, in the Arc, for example, that he can definitely get it done. So I kind of like Village Voice each way. If Kalpana wins, I have no qualms about that. It's probably the best horse in the race, but I just don't like the price.
Okay, 16-1 for Village Voice, and Christian Demuro was on board this filly when they was last seen and winning so comfortably. So they obviously think that the confidence that he gave her, and he's won on her before as well. I think it was looking back on her race record last October. So she seems to be a horse that will also thrive with the ground. So Village Voice at 16-1 is a nice double figure price for you for this Fillies and Mares Stakes. Ross, what do you think about that, especially in view to the likes of Kalpana and maybe these younger horses, these 3-year-olds who are really progressing, and that we probably haven't seen the best of them yet, and the likes of Kalpana, hasn't she thrived this season? The studies of man really have done. She was rated 78 in April, and she now arrives at the end of the season off 113. But a lot of horses are in that same ilk. That's just sort of have improved, and hopefully we'll see more from them next year too.
Yeah, I like Kalpana, Jess, and I like the story of Kalpana. It's a really nice progressive horse, and for me, I get infuriated by the lack of patience shown in the industry at times, and we see plenty of that exhibited at the sales last week. But I'm with TC, and I think she's got to go again. She's got to step up again. She's had quite a long season, and she's just got a few bits to prove. So I wanted to come at an each way angle. Queen of the Pride was the one I came down on for the Gosens and Oisin Murphy. You have to say she bombed out really badly in the Yorkshire Oaks last time, but she was never really in a comfort zone. I'm hoping you can put that down to the ground, which was good to firm. It was the quickest ground she'd raced on, and she was quite well fancied for that. So she's clearly held in some regard. Prior to that, she looked really good, thumping Tiffany in the Lancashire Oaks. Tiffany's gone to win a Group 2 in Germany since and is shorter in the market at this time than Queen of the Pride. Tiffany 7-1, Queen of the Pride 9-1. That didn't seem to make sense to me whatsoever. I'm hoping that she's going to like the slower ground. It could be that she's very niche and that she doesn't want slow ground and she can't handle fast ground. But her Damn Simple Verse stayed really well. The only time she ran on soft ground, Simple Verse, she handled it perfectly well. She finished runner-up, but only just touched off in a decent race. So I'm coming at this from the angle of, I think there's plenty of stamina with Queen of Pride. You're going to have to stay over this trip. I hope she'll handle the ground. And in a race where Kalpana could well just prove a little bit better than all the others, the price didn't appeal. So Queen of the Pride each way is my thought.
Okay, 9-1, Queen of the Pride would be apt. The daughter of Roaring Lion, who obviously had one of his best days at Ascot on Champions Day a few years ago now for Oisin Murphy and John and Daly Gosden. So they would really like that, especially it being the Qatar sponsored British Champions Day, or Kipco British Champions Day, I should say. But that's interesting. Against the favourite here with Kalpana, we've got some each way selection. So good race if you want to follow this in from a betting perspective. 9-1, Queen of the Pride, as said, Village Voice and each way shout 16-1. Got to remind you that we've discussed the sprint stakes. Montasib is the one of note for TC, and we also like Bouvetière, and that's a 25% boost race from SBK, so make sure you get involved with that. That's really got something to like about it there with such a deep field, and deep fields all the way through. That Fillies and Mares Stakes is well populated. Let's move on to one of the feature races of the day, the Queen Elizabeth II Stakes. This is the Group 1, the mile, the straight mile it's used here, and we've got the standout miler of the season in this race, and that's Charon for Sylvester de Souza and Roger Varian, who was overturned at a short price and when last seen by running and sort of let the race go ahead of him when Tribalist beat that field last time out at Longchamp in the Prix de Moulins. So Sylvester de Souza and Roger Varian hoping that this horse can end the season on a high before he retires. We've got the likes of Tamfana, Factor Cheval, Metropolitan, the French Guineas winner, Prague, which has definitely been one of, if not the story of the season for Dylan Cooner, an ex-Coolmore horse who's cost just 10 grand by the stable lad who owns him, and is now been supplemented for this Group 1, and hoping that he can sort of add a little bit of stardust and a bit of quality to the stories that we come out of on Champions Day. So this race, no surprise really that Charon is the price he is at 11-10. TC, can you see an angle where he's beaten again like last year? Is there something that's going to make it really difficult for him?
I mean, no horse is ever a good thing, especially on Champions Day. Well, I mean, there are the odd good things, but not on this day. There won't be. Charon is super solid. He is the most solid of all the favourites across the whole day, in my opinion. It's pretty difficult to not have that opinion, to be honest, based on what he's done this year as well. And you look at figures, his RPRs every time have been between 117 and 125. He's rated 122, which gives him an edge on all of these horses. Not a huge edge on some, but still an edge. He handles conditions. He's not been over-raced. And there's a strong case to be made that he should be unbeaten. I mean, that Lockinge, where audience went well clear, and then Charon ran home. He was the only horse to make ground up. He should have won that day, probably. And then last time, he was obviously given way too much to do. It wasn't a very good ride, and he should have beaten Tribalist. So there is a strong case to be made that this is one of the best, if not the best, flat horse right now, and he deserves to be favourite. I can see 5-4 currently available. I think he'll go off about evens, to be honest, and that gives you like a 6% margin. If you're into your value and you're punting, and that's not terrible. So I couldn't even say that the price is enough to put me off him, because I don't think it is. I am just going to look for a little bit of an each way alternative instead. As I say, I think Charon will probably win this race. My each way alternative is Factor Cheval. Now, I think he'll go off second favourite at 9-2, 5-1-ish, and he's a much bigger price now, so that gives me a bigger margin. He was given a little bit too much to do in this race last year, where he finished really well for second. Big Rock was away and gone, not the Big Rock we've seen this year. I don't know what's happened to him, albeit he did run better in the Canada, last time. This season, he's been very lightly campaigned. Only the 3 outings, largely due to ground, but also the fact that he went to Meydan at the start of the year, and it took him a while to come back 100% and ready to run again. I thought he was given a shocker at Royal Ascot, to be honest, by Maxime Guillon. He stayed in the middle of the track, away from virtually every other horse, and he just wasn't given a chance to win. So it's a line through that for me. Last time up, he didn't get his ground, but he ran okay. So that was a bit of a promising start. He's going to get his conditions. We know he handles Ascot. In this race last year, he ran well considering the position he was in early on, and I'd be disappointed if Factor Cheval didn't make the top three. And if you're betting each way, you get more bang for your buck each way here on Factor Cheval with less risk than you would if you were betting Charon at a short price. So I'll take Factor Cheval.
And to add to that, the French's record in this race, Freddie Head won this with Solo and Charm Spirit. Christopher Head obviously won this with Big Rock. And they seem potentially maybe because they give their horses a bit of a break in the middle part of the season and they don't overly race them. And this horse, Factor Cheval, as you mentioned, he hasn't been seen a huge amount. Obviously, he was campaigned over in France, in I should say Dubai, and had that big win at Meydan on Dubai World Cup night. But yeah, he's kind of lightly raced compared to some of the others here. So Factor Cheval in for TC. Ross, what about your thoughts with this? We've got, as I say, really solid miler who's done seemingly very versatile ground-wise. There's a lot to like about, the way that, he has progressed as a 4-year-old. But would you agree with what TC says, that the price is not even that off-putting, but there's probably other horses in here? Or do you think he's solid enough to follow in, and that's a good price for a horse who's been so good this season?
Yeah, he has been really good this season, and I agree with TC that I think the price is perfectly reasonable. He could well be odds on the day. The only thing that puts me off is my history of, I've been against this horse his entire career. I didn't think he was particularly good. I thought they were a moderate bunch, and I've been proven to be wrong. That happens plenty in my life, and when I belatedly jump on the bandwagon, it normally comes back and bites me, and they get a hard luck story, or they don't run to their level. So just at 11 to 10, I'd rather watch him do it and sort of mark him down as a horse that I got wrong his entire career than jump on late and sort of let myself down. So that's the only reason I don't back him. And TC's right, he should be unbeaten this season. The only time he's been beaten, he's been given poor rides and had the race taken out of his control. But I like Prague each way. I think, he's really progressive. He's got a rating of 117. He only made his debut in June. He's had 5 starts. Now, there is, of course, 2 ways of looking at that. Is he going to have the experience for this step up in grade, firstly? And secondly, is he going to be fresh enough, having had 5 runs since June? But the flip side of that is, I still don't think he's reached his ceiling. He showed last time that he really thrived on soft ground. He found another level. And if the ground was the key to the finding of that another level, he's already proven he stays further than this. He's a 10 furlong winner. He's a Galileo. We know that they are tough as teak. So I'm hopeful that this 6th run won't be one run too many. They've stumped up the money. It's a great story, but you can't factor that into your punting. But like TC, I just thought if I can get Prague into the first 3, there's a better return for me than putting my hopes on Charon, who might well block the copybook when I follow him at 11 to 10. So Prague for me, I don't think he's out of it. And I think the fact he's come from Coolmore and, the Dylan Cunha story should not take away from the fact that this is a proper training performance and a proper horse in the making.
Yeah, certainly. I agree with that. And I think, as you say, we still don't know. They haven't really lifted the bonnet on him enough to know what more he could do on this soft ground. That's exactly the angle I thought with him, is that bar the first run when he won, he hasn't had the opportunity to run on this kind of ground until he bolted up at Newmarket last time. Yes, it was a weaker race than this, but they've got to give it a go. They've got to see how he handles this assessment. So at 8 to 1 in a race where there is each way value around, Prague is a great option for you there, and that adds with another 8 to 1 shout Factor Cheval for TC. So we've got some nice prices for this British Champions Day. Really enjoying what options we've got. I wonder if that will be the same for the big one, the Kyprios Champion Stakes. This race, as we know, is on over 10 furlongs. It's on the inner track, and I think that knowing William Haggis and watching the way that he just talks about horses, he's got this sort of nervous energy about every horse. They could be absolutely brilliant in whatever they've done, and we know that it happened with Baaid a few years ago when he still felt a bit anxious coming towards the end of the season with a horse who'd been unbeaten. And you get that sense of economics that, yes, there's no hiding places with the ground, whereas he was worried about that with Baid. Everything seems to be in his favour for economics, yet William Haggas still you feel that nervousness around him. And he does have a really solid contender with this French horse, Calandagan, for Francis Graffard, who came one length to City of Troy. He absolutely bolted up at Royal Ascot back in June. He's been very, very well campaigned by Francis Graffard, who I imagine has had worked this backwards from this plan for a long time out. He's a great trainer for a plan, as we saw in the King George with Goliath. So I don't know about you, TC, but this is the matchup that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, what a great race. Both of these horses are fantastic, rated in the 120s and open to loads of improvements, so we don't actually know where their ceiling is just yet. I've been a Calandagan fan. I actually bet him at York when he was behind another horse I love in City of Troy, and I bet him and tipped him at Royal Ascot on one of our pods. And it's been the opposite for economics. I tipped him on the podcast back in April in a maiden at Newbury when he won, but ever since I've been against him, including last time in the Irish Champion when I thought he was too short a price. But I'm switching it up. I'm with economics this time. And it's not because I'm super confident that he is definitely the best horse in the race. I just think he's open to more improvement on the ground than Calandagan. Plus, Calandagan's had two very hard races. I know Royal Ascot, he bolted up, but it's Royal Ascot, like he would have been 100% primed to run his best. So it does take a toll. Economics has had one very tough race. But with William Haggas, you always know there's a little bit more to come. Always more, always more. A bit like Sir Michael Stout. So I think there's just that little bit of an edge towards economics, and they're roughly the same price in the market. So I'll take economics here. I just think he's going to love every part of this. The ground, the track, the setup. There's not going to be necessarily team tactics against him this time. I hope economics wins. I don't know whether he's staying in training or if he's going to be retired, but he's a very exciting horse, and it'll be great to see William Haggas have another winner on what should be a good day for him.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. You think that Calandagan has had some tough races, but I suppose he's had more time off the track than economics did. Do you think that economics would have had quite a tough race though in Ireland, because he had to really battle and show off what he could do? It's very gritty on what possibly could have been quick enough ground for him.
I don't disagree necessarily with that. He did have to battle, and it looked like he was going to be beaten at one point when Auguste Rodin came alongside. But it felt like the horse wasn't giving up absolutely everything until he was challenged. And then when he was challenged, he just produced a little bit more. And he had that mid-season break, didn't he, before he beat JRB? And he's had two runs since. So I still think there's just a little bit left. It's not like he's coming back off a short break, or he's coming back off, a season where he's had race after race after race after race. I mean, at the start of the year, he was still a maiden. He'd only had one run. So I feel like, yes, he's had one tough-ish race, but there's definitely more to come. Whereas Calandagan last time ran his heart out to even get close to City of Troy, and the time before at Royal Ascot. The performance itself, I know he wasn't challenged, but the performance itself was so good that he had to run almost to 100% of his max capacity. So I think he's had probably harder races than economics has.
Yeah, I wonder, how much William Haggas learns from what happened with Baid, and he ran him a lot, but he had big performances Baid kept on putting up, and when he got to Ascot, he just didn't have that big performance. Whereas we've seen some gritty performance from economics. He does it slightly differently, and he was given a beautiful ride by Tom Marquand, and probably in a race setup where we know it didn't really pan out to what they expected it to be. Talking about horses who've had tough races, Los Angeles being in here off the back of a massive third in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, where he led the whole way. A bit like your point around Content, I was slightly surprised to see him here only 2 weeks later, but he's a beauty of a horse who's had a great season, and they obviously think he can end it on a high. Ross, with all that in mind, we thought about the horses that are obvious at the top here. Do you think there's anything that can scare them? Because we've got some genuine Group 1 performers, and my opinion is that Calandagan is the real horse in here, because that performance with City of Troy, if he is the best we've ever seen, if he does win the Breeders' Cup Classic, he should be really the one that they've all got to beat here.
Yeah, I don't think it can scare them. I think if they turn up at their best, they finish first and second. But I just found it hard at the prices to pick from them. If you use Ghostwriter as a form line, In the Juddmonte, he was 3.5 lengths behind Calandigan. And yet in the Irish Champion Stakes, he was 2 lengths behind Economics. So I'm not sure the market's an accurate reflection of their ability, but I am with TC, and I think Economics is still building through his season. And I would highlight that for all the people that threw absolute pelters at William Haggis, that they didn't just run him in the Derby, because that's what we want to see, and we're the punters, and what we want matters. He's been beautifully handled all the way through to arrive at Champions Day with a real chance and still progressing. So I think people can get back in their box about that and just, leave really esteemed trainers like William Haggis to do their job. But I couldn't pick between them, for all that I think Economics will probably progress a little bit more still. So for my last flat selection of 2024, because the jumps is back, I'm going to try and throw a real Hail Mary. I like Royal Rhyme at 50-1 with SBK. He is not a Group 1 performer on all known form, but he is a soft ground performer. He's run on soft ground 4 times. He's won 4 times in handicaps and Group 3s before TC messaged me on WhatsApp. I get that. But I think ground at this time of the season can be a great, great leveller. And if the ground is the real key to him, which it looks like it is, because he's got plenty of ground to find with Calandigan from the last time they bumped into each other. I just think at 50-1, he's what I want to be with. And as I'm talking, I'm just thinking, actually, it's not my last flat selection, is it? Because we'll cover the futurity next week, because this is British Champions Day to climax the flat season, and then next week we have a Group 1 for 2-year-olds. I mean, if anything explains the mess the BHA race programme is in, that is it. But to get back on point, Royal Rhyme at 50-1, he'll love the ground. Carl Burke's having an absolutely fantastic season and could well bow out with upsetting 2 really smart horses.
So you're thinking this 51 shout is not just an each way, selection. This is a horse that can win at 50-1.
Well, TC has just said with both of them that, TC's argued that Calandigan's probably had a hard season. You slightly suggest that Economics might have had a hard race last time. It's not beyond at this time of season that those 2 don't run to their form. And then you take those 2 out of it becomes more open. So no, he's an each way shout. I'm back in a 50-1 shot each way all day long. But just do think ground can level things out. And if those 2 at the top of the market don't quite perform, and you can get this cat and mouse thing where Tom Marquand is watching Calandigan and vice versa, stranger things have happened, and Clifford Lee will be allowed to go and do his own thing on Royal Rhyme, that's for certain.
Okay, right. Well, you've heard it here. 50-1 selection for the Kipco Champion Stakes, as well as confidence around the favourite Economics for TC. Right, we've come to the end of our preview of the big racing at Ascot. Just a reminder again that there's a 25% boost with SBK on the Kipco Sprint Stakes, where we've given you Montasib and Bouvertière going into the Fillies and Mares Stakes, Queen of the Pride for Ross, and we've got Village Voice as an each-way selection for TC. The QE2 Stakes, there's confidence around Prague and also Factor Cheval. And then finally, as we said, Economics for TC, but Royal Rhyme at 50-1. We've got some decent prices in there for a great day's racing. So I'm looking forward to this. And it's as it should be as well. We've got 6 races. That's how racing should be. Just 6 races. Keep it simple. But we've also going to give Ross and TC the opportunity to give us a nap. We've given you plenty for the other races, but if we need a nap as well on top of all of that. We've got the long distance cup that we didn't cover. TC. We've also got the Balmoral at the end of the day. But I've had an eye into what you've gone for. So why your nap selection, and what is it about this horse that you feel like is going to mean that he's going to continue on what's been a tremendous season?
Yeah, firstly, 6 races in a card, absolutely fantastic. As you say, you should see the 14 race cards at Gulfstream. I have to look at. That's no fun. Next point, I am going to Ascot. I'm not looking at any other card. I didn't want to nap a horse that I've already touched on, which left 2 races, the Long Distance Cup and the Balmoral. If you're napping the Balmoral, then I mean, fair enough, but that's not for me. That race is wide open and extremely tough. So I thought, why not? And I don't love the price on this horse. I know he's a short price. I've given some bigger prices earlier on, so stay out the comments. But my nap's going to be Kyprios. I love this horse. I will have a bet on him at a short price. I'm not, afraid to say that. I think he's going to be a short price but still a bettable price. I think he should be 1-2 or even shorter in this race. The long distance cup at 120 kicks off Saturday's card. He's just my favourite horse in training at the moment, aside from City of Troy, but we won't see him again in England. Kyprios is just fantastic. He doesn't really try, and he just goes about his business. He battles, he wins every race that he ever encounters, seemingly, and I love his style of racing as well. Ryan constantly just has to nudge away, keep him on his job. But the horse is just, lobbing along. And then when it's time to go, he goes. And it's kind of game over. He never wins by far, but you always know he's going to hold on. Look, he's racked up 4 Group 1 successes in a row. We know the horse Kyprios. I don't need to go through his form. He got beaten in this race last year, but he had a truncated season with a huge injury that almost stopped his career. Actually, he almost died from the injury, and he only had 2 starts last year. He needed the first run, and then he wasn't fully fit for this race, and he still ran a great second. He actually hit the front that day, going on to win, and then Trawlerman, who was leading, came back and repassed him. He got tired. Trawlerman's not going to beat him here if Kyprios performs at his best. I just think he'll win. So it's more of a caveat. I just wanted to include this race and talk about the horse, but he is my nap, Kyprios, in the long distance cup at 120.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm probably it's the right opportunity for me to add in my little bit about Belloccio, because I was waiting all morning and looking at declarations, and it was 9:57 and they hadn't declared. And I thought maybe they're not going to do it. Maybe the dreams will come true, and we'll have an opportunity. But let's be honest, Kyprios is the standout horse of his generation, and probably a good few generations. We've seen the likes of Yates, but it's taken me a while to probably warm to him. But probably because he's done what he's done this year after going through the ring and back with his injury, you've got to love him even more. And he's a real testament to Aidan O'Brien, and he's the most Group 1s he's ever had has been with this horse, and that's quite an achievement when you go through all the horses that he's trained. We've got Belloccio in here. He is very fit. He is very fresh. He's not run since Royal Ascot. He had a tough time afterwards. He was very jarred up, and we didn't go to Galway. We didn't go to either Cesarowicz's, but he's been ready to go. But he will love the ground. He will really appreciate it. Danny Tied to Hope, but we hope he's going to have a great day with Prague. Is booked for the ride. He rides Ascot very well. We'll be running and screaming our hearts out for a place, and I don't think he's a bad price with that in mind, around 20-1, because I know how well he's been. And before Vauban went off to Australia, he'd been working with him and been showing him a little bit of pace. So that's my insight there for you with Belloccio. Right. Have we finished Ascot, Ross, or have you got something to nap for us in the Balmoral?
There's Catterick as well, isn't there? No. I'm sorry. I have jumped to Stratford. I did have a look in the Balmoral actually, just to go real wild, but I couldn't, with all honesty, find something. So my nap comes from the 220 from Stratford, and it's a real nice mare called Petticoat Lucy, who hasn't been seen since December last year. She got brought down at Cheltenham actually when still in contention, off a higher mark than this and a better race than this. She's down to a mark now of 113. She's previously run well fresh off a 160-day break. This is 309 days, but I think once you get over 150 days, they're starting from scratch really with their fitness, so I don't really have a concern about that. Jeremy Scott's been very quiet. He's not had a winner for a long time, but he's not had many runners, so that doesn't concern me. And I just felt last year she was a mare, when she won first time out, she looked like she could be really progressive. She perhaps just had a couple of excuses since then. Like I said, she's just £1 higher now than she was when winning on debut last year. This doesn't look a deep race, and conditions should suit. She'll go left-handed. She'll like a little bit of cutting the ground. So Petticoat Lucy in the 220 for Jeremy Scott and Lorcan Williams.
Okay, we'll give you that because you gave us a winning tip last week. So fair enough. And we're going to be back for more. I can see that smile inside. It's coming. You have been very patient. Right. Well, what a good insight we've had there for Ascot and Champions Day. We've given you a lot of selections, a lot of options for those 4 Group 1s, and something a little bit more to that, and a jump selection for good measure. And SBK offering a 25% boost on that sprint, which is the 155, the first of the Group 1. So get involved, whatever way you look at it, whatever angle you've chosen. If you're a new SBK user, you will get £40 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Make sure to head to SBK for lots of others offers, promotions throughout the weekend. We've got new series, I think, Ross, of Miller's Movers as well, and a new format slightly too. Is that right?
Yeah, slightly new formats. We're going to cover a little bit of Ireland. The anti-post bets went quite well last year. We found That's Right, Gino, pretty early on for the Coral Trophy, and Chianti Classico for the Ultima. So we're going to have a bit more of a stab at that. But I'm going to try and keep Cheltenham Chat to a minimum, because I'm already getting a bit tired of my Cheltenham targets to follow in October. I mean, it's nonsense. The trainers won't have worked it out yet, so quite how we're meant to, I don't know.
Yeah, this is the place to be if you want what's happening right now, as opposed to what's happening in 6 months' time. And we will hold you to that. TC, Ross, great to catch up as always. And best of luck this weekend. We'll see you next week.